Welcome to another episode of the Couples Academy Show. Today we're starting a new series and we're talking about rethinking divorce. Join us now.
If you have something to say, I'd like to hear it.
I want a divorce.
What did you say?
I want a divorce, Megan.
Are you serious? Of course I'm serious, Paul. I want a divorce. Divorce?
I want a divorce.
You want a divorce?
I have wings, Charlie. I want to fly.
I will divorce you so fast it'll make your head spin.
I got a lawyer. We're getting a divorce.
I'm divorcing you, George.
Ted, I'm leaving you.
I want a divorce.
Are you asking me for a divorce?
Yay! 2 Christmases!
I think we should get a divorce.
Like a real divorce?
I think it's time that we start talking about a divorce.
I think I want a divorce.
What?
I'm leaving. And I want a divorce.
Not coming back. I want a divorce.
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 I want a divorce. I want a divorce.
I want a divorce!
I want a divorce.
I want divorce.
Oui, je demande le divorce.
I want a divorce.
Me too. I'm trying to think about what I want.
Yeah, me too. Why don't you say it at the same time? 1, 2, 3.
I want a divorce.
So what did you decide?
I want a divorce.
You want a divorce? Say it!
What, you're saying what, you want a divorce?
Yeah, maybe I do.
I want a divorce!
You want a divorce?
I need a divorce.
You got it.
I want a divorce. How's that?
A divorce? Great! Fucking want a divorce!
I want a divorce.
Divorce. I knew we had something in common. Here, sign these.
What's this?
It's a divorce.
Good night, Freddie.
Going through a divorce.
I want a divorce. Are those not like the 4 scariest words to hear from your spouse?
Yeah, I think it depends though. I think that, for the person that wants a divorce and they've been holding on thinking that they're never going to get one, they probably are excited to hear those words because there's a lot of people who want a divorce and they don't think their spouse is ever going to give it to them. So now they got to go through a battle and they got to go through all this stuff and pay all this extra money because they can't come to an agreement to have an amicable divorce. I think the big issue here is the fact that we race down the aisle to get married, right? We can't wait to get married. Interesting was mostly women on there saying they wanted a divorce, right?
That
we're
is
the
very
ones like, we
interesting.
want to get married. We want to get married. We want to get down that aisle. And we're the first ones to check out a lot of times when things get rough.
Now that's a great point because statistically, women, I think it's like 67 to 75% of all divorces are initiated by women. But interestingly, who are the ones who initiate the marriage?
Women.
Women. See, we may get on one knee, we may pop the question, we may have the ring, but it's women who are initiating the idea.
We're like, we need to solidify this. You need to put a ring on it. Like, what are we waiting on, right? Especially those church folks who want to sanctify the sins, sanctify the bed.
We got to race.
We got to get married so we can sanctify this stuff.
And that speaks to another issue because whatever it may be, whether religious reasons, whether cultural reasons, whether I want to get out of my parents' house, whatever it is, a lot of times people are getting married for the wrong reasons, or they may want the right thing in the wrong season, and so therefore they experience all types of challenges in their marriage. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know anybody. I'm sure there may be somebody out there. I don't know too many people who are walking down the aisle in anticipation of a divorce. Right? So you're going down the aisle with the expectation that everything's going to be well. Because it's interesting, we have this idea of once we get married, we're just going to ride off into the sunset and everything's going to be great. And many of us haven't truly prepared ourselves for this new season. We talk about the 4 seasons of a successful relationship: the dating season, committed courtship, engagement, and marriage. But few of us have really prepared for marriage. We prepared for the wedding.
Yeah.
We spent upwards of a year preparing for that day, but we haven't spent enough time preparing for the day after.
Absolutely. I just want to say hello to our regulars. Hey, Steve Johnson, good to see you. Letitia, good morning. Vashan, good morning. Yvonne, all right, we're ready. Yes, we are. Good to see everybody this morning. Hey, Heather, she says, this video is so sad. It's too easy for people to walk away in our society. When times get hard, you are supposed to stay on your post and push through together.
I love it.
Good point.
I love it. That's right. So many people are experiencing challenges and they have this knee-jerk reaction to say, you know what, I'm done, it's over, I'm out. And they want to pile drive their way to the divorce court, not realizing that if they take the time to pause and work through their issues, they'll realize, wait a minute, we could overcome these challenges. And so divorce doesn't have to be an inevitability.
Yeah, I think, because the divorce statistics are so high, you even have millennials saying, is there any relevance to marriage? Or is there any real benefit? If I have an over 50% chance of divorce, why am I walking into this marriage? What is this all about? And I think many of us look at it as well. When we're going through trials and trauma, we think, golly, it wasn't like this when we were dating. It just seemed like it was so much easier. You always look good, you always smell good, you always acted good. Everything was always good when we were dating. But now we're married and we're in this committed courtship and we're long term and we got children and all the weights and all of this are coming down on us and we feel trapped. This is where the whole idea of the ball and chain comes in, because nobody has ever taken the time to teach you how to deal with conflict, which is something that you cannot avoid in life. Anybody who is the master at avoiding conflict is a very alone person, right? You cannot deal with life without conflict. You walk out the door, there's conflict. There's conflict driving, conflict at your job, conflict with your family. Of course, there's going to be conflict with your spouse. And we are so ready to bounce when we encounter conflict.
I think the 3 biggest skills that couples need if they're going to be married is, number 1, communication skills. Number 2, interpersonal relationship skills. And number 3, conflict resolution. Because to your point, it is going to happen. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, but when it's going to happen. And when it happens, are we prepared to know how to overcome these challenges? We always talk about the difference between your relationship and your marriage. And so if you think that everything's going to be like it was when you were dating and there's nothing but romance and quality time and we can get lost in each other's eyes and everything's going to be all great, you're sadly mistaken, because there's a shift that takes place where you're dealing with children and bills and work and extracurricular and maintenance and all the responsibilities of life. And the conflict comes in because we're more married to our method than we are to the ultimate mutual goal. And that's what causes the conflict. And conflict is nothing more than 2 people in the same place at the same time with 2 different positions that can't seem to find any type of resolution.
Absolutely. So we're talking about, rethinking divorce, because there's pros and cons to both. We know people on both sides. We don't put down people who have divorced. We understand there are certain circumstances where it was absolutely necessary. There are also certain circumstances where you were even in reflection and you think back and say, maybe I could have worked it out. Maybe it was as a result of not knowing how to do any better. Whatever the case may be, divorce is a real thing in our society. We deal with it all the time. But we want to challenge you to rethink divorce as the solution to your conflict.
So number 1, if you haven't gotten the book yet, you should get it, The Audacity of Marriage, 10 Principles to Lifelong Partnership. And it says that 50% of all marriages end in divorce. Another 30% experience an emotional or social divorce. And this means that 80% of all marriages result in some kind of divorce, only leaving 20% of couples who experience a fulfilling marriage. So we see that it's a huge issue. So whether legal or emotional, it's having a tremendous effect on marriages. Now, let me give you this other statistic that's really interesting. Of divorce facts, first marriages, 50%, we know that those who do have divorce end in divorce. Second marriages, upwards of 66% of them end in divorce. And third marriages, 75%.
What does that tell you? When you think of those statistics, what does that tell you about your likelihood of actually compounding the issues? Because here's the deal. even when you divorce, even though you got away from that person, there is still a psychological, emotional attachment to that person.
Wow.
And the damage that took place in that relationship that you did not deal with or did not mend because you got away from it, that you're now bringing into the next relationship. And that's just the one thing you're bringing in. There's other things that you bring too. You bring your children, right? You bring bills.
Yeah.
You bring all kinds of issues into that next relationship, which means that not only are you going to have to deal with the issues that unearthed in that marriage, you also have to deal with the issues that you brought.
That's right.
That's why it compounds. So that's 66% at the second marriage. And then what was it, 75%?
75%
with
of
the
third
third?
marriages, yeah.
It gets harder.
Yeah. And it's
So you don't escape.
You don't. And it's also an indication that your spouse may not be the only problem. See, you can run from your spouse, but you can't run from yourself. And if you're bringing you into your next relationship and the probability of divorce goes up, maybe there's things within you that you haven't identified, that you haven't worked on, that you haven't taken a look at. And a lot of times people are oblivious to their own issues, faults, flaws, idiosyncrasies.
We always are.
We are. And we bring that stuff into a new relationship and wind up compounding and complicating what happens in that new marriage. So these are things to be mindful of. There's a lot of comments that are coming in. Let's go and see what the people have to say. Janet says, also conflict comes in when we seek ungodly counsel, when we take advice from single people who have never been married and who only believe in worldly principles.
So true.
It's interesting, and we say this all the time. If you have problems in your relationship, find someone who represents the solution to your problem, the answer to your problem. We have a tendency of sharing our problems with people who share our problems. Yeah. And that's where we get into trouble. So wise counsel is very, very, very important.
Oh my goodness. I just want to say hello to a couple people. Hey, Kathy, good to see you. Sharonda, good to see you. Tamara, good to see you. Omar says insane stats, and they are insane.
Yeah.
But I think that's the reality of it. We need to actually look at what's going on, because when we think that getting away and escaping is a solution, we are sorely mistaken. No matter what, you're going to have to deal with the trauma. Now, let's not negate to say that there are some circumstances that you need to remove yourself from. If there is abuse, and there are certain things that you know that you can escape. If you are being beat, you need to separate and deal with those issues. I don't agree with churches that say, hey, he's a good man or she's a good woman, you can deal with the beating. There are some religious institutes that actually want you to stay together through abuse, through child abuse even, somebody abusing your children, or through drug abuse that is affecting you and your household and opening you up to all kinds of danger. No, there are boundaries around that, and the Bible gives you provisions for when you can leave, right? But I think what it is that we are so quick to throw in the towel because there aren't a lot of examples out there of people who are doing it right for the long haul. Many of us know people who have been married a long time, right? They got their 30, 40 years in, but they are miserable. Yeah. And so it's almost like I can't even reserve a bank of positivity for my future because I'm not seeing it. This is why we need to actually work out our issues, work out our differences so that we can have the marriage that we actually aspired to when we first got started.
And to your point, you mentioned earlier, like physical abuse. I mean, we personally know people who have died in the confines of their relationship because they didn't leave early enough.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
Domestic violence can lead to death.
Absolutely.
And the impact that it has on the children. If I'm not mistaken, in that situation years ago, weren't the children actually present when one partner actually murdered the other?
Absolutely. There was a scenario where he was threatening for years. He was threatening for years, so much to the fact where she actually wrote a letter to the children saying, if you're reading this, he has killed me. And he actually did that, shot her, killed her in front of her children.
Yeah. So we're not condoning anything crazy like that.
If you're in a situation like that, you need to seek some support and assistance immediately. These aren't things that you ignore. But we're talking about the bailout. We're talking about America is getting bailed out, banks are getting bailed out. You're doing marriage bailouts because you just don't want to deal with your issues.
Yeah. And on that, a lot of times people get divorced because of just burnout, right? So they've allowed all of these irreconcilable differences, whatever they may be, to cause them to become emotionally burnt out. And so they just throw in the towel, call it quits, and just give up without taking the necessary steps. And so I think a question came in I need to get to the question, but it
Kelly?
was something like, how long should you wait?
Oh, sorry.
You know, I don't know what that question is, but how long should you wait if you're going through challenges? And here it is. I can't pronounce that first name, but how long is one supposed to suffer? Being tired and exhausted are so real and powerful.
Yeah.
That's very true. Here's the reality. When we talk about what you should do if you're in an unhealthy relationship, the first response should not be divorce. There's so many steps that take place in between that. Number one, did you read a book? Did you get a counselor? Did you go to a retreat? Did you go to a conference? Have you done anything to invest in your marriage? Number one. Okay, great. How about this? If things have gotten so bad, maybe you want to try an in-house separation to see how that works, to see if you two can come back. Then an outhouse controlled separation, and then a divorce. So the divorce should be the last option, not the first knee-jerk response that you have. And so we've seen so many people who have been in miserable places in their relationship that have put in the work and were able to turn things around. And I think that's the hope for so many people who are currently going through and questioning, should they stay or should they go?
Good point. Good point.
All right, so listen, another great statistic I want to read to you. About 1/3 of couples who divorce feel that they made the right decision. Another 1/3 are uncertain or have mixed feelings about their divorce. And approximately 1/3 of divorced couples eventually regret the decision within 5 years. So here we have 2/3 of all people who have either considered or actually gotten a divorce that actually regretted it.
Yeah.
They realized that, wait a minute, what I was hoping would happen once I got to the divorce actually didn't happen. And I think many people are just sad and miserable and unhappy.
Yeah.
And for them, divorce means a pathway to happiness.
Right.
But statistics suggest that between 1 and 5 years after your divorce, people are no more happy being alone than where they were when they were in the relationship.
Wow.
And those who were willing to fight through those challenges and decided to remain married. Now, some people stay married because of the kids. If that's the only thing that's keeping you together during those rough times,
That's not
so
enough.
be it.
Well,
let it be the case. If that's what's keeping you together
okay.
while you work on your relationship to get you to a better place,
Okay,
then,
well,
then there
I was
it
going to
is.
come from a different perspective because somebody has a really great comment. And it says, if you're the one that's getting help and the offender is not, that's not conducive to stay either, and emotional abuse is real too. And so, you know, I think about that when it comes to your children. You know, growing up in an abusive home myself, sometimes the children are actually the brunt of the abuse, and we have these mindsets as mothers a lot of time that we want to keep our family together. We have these ideas that, you know, I don't want them to grow up without a father. And so we will make unhealthy decisions based on what is called a bitter root, right? The bitter root is, I didn't have it when I was a child, so now I'm going to make sure my kids have it. I'm just going to put blinders on about all the unhealthy situations that are in the marriage. So to your point, Hassani, yes, if you have a healthy situation that you just have some issues that you need to deal with, yes, if the kids are a factor to keep you grounded, great. But we don't want to use that to ignore some very unhealthy situations inside of your relationship.
And this is why counseling is so critically important. And to that point, we encourage that you get not only couples counseling, but individual counseling. There's some things that couples counseling will not address that may stem back to your childhood, all types of issues that have gone on unresolved that are impacting not only your marriage, is impacting how you parent, is impacting how you show up in life. So these things cannot be mistaken. And so if that's you who's in need of help, we encourage you, go to couplesacademy.org, set up a discovery call. Let's get into a conversation to figure out how we can assist you. But people are divorcing all over the place, and we're realizing that there's a crisis in the land because not only is it affecting your household, but it does have an effect on society. And at the end of the day, we want people to be in healthy relationships. We want people to be in a better place. We have Judy from South Africa says, I also think couples should really consider proper premarital counseling before getting married.
Keyword is proper. Keyword is proper. Because honestly, your church or your pastor is not always equipped to handle your premarital counseling the way you need to. We went through it, and they did the best that they could. I mean, they have great intentions. They asking you the basic questions, but the deep stuff, the nitty-gritty things, understanding our different personality styles and how we mix and how to avoid landmines in your relationship, unearthing things that are hidden, secret stuff that just shows up later on in the marriage. A lot of that stuff gets glossed over and not covered, and that's why we're surprised in the marriage. We say, I went through premarital counseling. It didn't work. It's because you didn't have proper premarital
There
counseling.
it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kathy says you must put work into the relationship and have faith and continue to trust the process. And that's the key. Like a lot of times people are trying to vacillate back and forth as to what they should do, and they're making permanent decisions in temporary situations sometimes. And so because you can't see beyond your today, you've lost all sense of hope, you feel helpless, and you're like, what's the point in staying in this? Yeah. And so in your emotions, you make a decision to go ahead and get a divorce. And so what we say is, listen, rather than making a decision when you're drenched and soaked and saturated in your emotions, because any decision you make in your emotions is a decision that you will regret. If you decide to stay, you're going to regret it and want to leave. Right. If you decide to leave, you're going to regret it and you're going to want to stay. So rather than making a decision from an emotional perspective, go through a process that allows you to determine the best decision to make, because now you're combining heart and head, right? Mind and emotions into the equation to do what's best for that relationship.
I see this comment here. Tamara, I have to respond to this. I have a question. I have a friend and her husband cannot function sexually. They have not had sex for about 4 years. She could not take it anymore and gave into temptation and cheated and left him for another man and now about to get married again. Is that even right? Is that even a question, Tamara? Is it right? To me, it's like Hassan, you were just talking about going on our emotions, right? We decide what's right and wrong based on how we feel, not based on any level of principles, right? You go into a marriage making certain commitments to each other, and as soon as things get hot, you bail. You know, when it comes to sexual dysfunction, I'll never forget a couple that where the male had a sexual dysfunction. He had an impotency problem, and he was so transparent about it. This was when we were overseas doing a conference. Do you remember that? I had never seen that level of transparency and willingness to deal with the issue. And they together were trying to work out ways to have sexual fulfillment even through his sexual dysfunction. Imagine something happens to me. I get breast cancer or something and have to have my breast removed. Now Hassani leaves me because he just can't handle the fact that I don't have breasts anymore. These are the things that happen in life. Like, we go through things. Now that doesn't speak to whatever marital issues you're going through in life. But there are so many cases where somebody has had it worse. I even know someone whose husband, they got married about 27 years old. And literally right after they got married, the husband started to fail. He had multiple sclerosis. He ended up becoming bedridden. He said, just leave me. My life is going to be over. Please don't stay with me. Just leave me. She was committed. She stayed by his bedside. The strength. She's a woman of God, okay? But the strength that it took for her, now she's, I think, 25, 30 years into this marriage. He's still here. She raised his sons. They did have children. They visit him. He's in a nursing home sometimes. Sometimes he's home because she can take care of him. You know, with multiple sclerosis, the sickness, it could be hard, more rough than other times. But that level of commitment, God is going to honor that. But we don't look at things like that. Everything that we do is so temporal, right? We think about, I have my needs now. We don't think about eternal, like eternally. We don't think about how this is going to affect us in the future. Yeah. So no, I think that is absolutely wrong for her to leave this man because of a sexual issue.
So just yesterday, I did a one-day intensive with a couple, and in their marriage, they've been married for 20 plus years. The last 7 years of their marriage, they haven't had sex at all. And they're now in a process of trying to restore that, to unpack the real issues. What we've known is that 9 times out of 10, when a couple's not having sex, it's not because there's anything sexually wrong in most cases. Yeah. There's not that there's anything physically wrong in most cases.
Right.
It's usually a relational or an emotional or a personal issue that's impacting sexuality. And so getting to the root of it and helping to resolve that can get a couple back on track. So first of all, there's nothing pleasurable about being in a sexless marriage at all. I don't think anybody would enjoy that. But before we end it, before we cheat, let's do everything possible to restore. So in that question, I'm not sure if they went to counseling. I'm not sure if they sought out help. I'm not sure if they did all those necessary things. And so I would say do those things first and then come to a determination.
There's so many questions in that, like what's going on with that. But say it is a permanent defect, it's an issue, right? It's just like validating leaving your spouse because you don't think they have the greatest sex. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things. We put all these boundaries and requirements and requests on our spouse based on what we see on TV, based on what we hear. We make these unrealistic expectations of our spouses that you should be performing at this level. I should be experiencing this pleasure based on what you heard. Those are the things that get in our head that make us feel entitled that I deserve to be able to cheat because you can't perform. That's not cool.
Yeah. Very good point. Kiara says, yes, Asani, not until going through this process did I realize the importance in investing in your marriage. Perhaps if we had invested sooner, we might not have been able to avoid some of these issues, or we might have been able to avoid some of these issues. Absolutely. And I think a lot of times people treat marriage counseling like they do their doctor. Like I'm only going if I'm flat on my back, if I'm in excruciating pain and I'm about to die. If there's not a bullet wound in my body, I'm not going. And so we wait till things get so bad before we make the decision to get the help we need. And if we would have done it a little bit earlier, we could have avoided a lot of the landmines and the pitfalls that we experience.
We talk about it all the time. We have to become explorers. And explorers sometimes means doing things that you've never done before. And actually seeking out new ways to do things, even sexually. Like you can explore a whole other realm of things if you actually are interested in exploring. That's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps it exciting, because at the end of the day, having sex and insertion, it's insertion. You want to be creative with it anyway, don't you? Do you call it same shoe sex? Is that what you call it?
Old shoe sex.
Old shoe sex. Hasani's always asking women, how many pairs of shoes do we have? Do we have one pair of shoes? No, because we would be bored. Do you have 1,000 pair of shoes? Yes, because you want to wear something different, try something different every time. Well, that's the same thing we want to apply in the bedroom, right? We're not satisfied with old shoe sex. So that means that we can bring all kinds of exploration into the bedroom within reason, right? To make sure that we aren't bored, that we don't have to step out, that we don't have reasons to say, okay, you can't perform this, I'm bored, I need to go find somebody else.
And these are the things that we need to be committed to doing. And when we make these decisions and are willing to explore things, the new opportunities, new realities in our marriage, we can turn things around. Whatever your current situation is, you don't have to remain there. All things are subject to change if you are willing to put in the work. Listen, you're listening to the Couples Academy Show. We'll be right back after this quick testimonial.
It's been about 15 years since we started to get on track. But even though we were on track that far back, we still weren't healed.
Yeah, there was still brokenness.
From our past brokenness that we caused in our marriage. So that took time to really recognize and address, because we were notorious for running or burying it under the rug.
There was a big infidelity in New York that took me 10 years to heal from.
10 years.
10 years.
And we were going through the motions, because with that infidelity, you don't want to wish it on your worst enemy. We had to experience murder through that. I was held at gunpoint with my own gun and watched the mistresses I was living with at that time killed in front of me, which she had to bear that burden too.
Yeah.
We lost our home to arson.
Our home was burned down.
Then an innocent person was killed rushing to the fire of our house burning down because of our mess.
It was hard to get through. And we had some counseling, and we thought that we were okay when we left New York. We thought we were okay because the counseling was intense. And then we moved out here and,
swept it under the rug.
Swept it under the rug.
And I'm like, why couldn't we have this 15 years ago? But I guess it's all in God's timing, because if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have had the testimony to go through to give people hope that you can, you know.
We were assigned to write. We were assigned to write these letters of forgiveness during this program that Hassani had.
Okay, give me the tissue.
And don't make me cry now. And he gave us hours to write these letters, and then we came back and then we had to read them, and Todd read his first. And I mean, within 2 minutes, we were all like boo-hooing in there. I mean, there was tears and wet carpet everywhere, and wet carpet. And he just spoke from his heart, and I really felt the realness that I needed, you know. And then when it was my turn, you know, I did the same thing. But the one thing that was said in there that was, I guess, explosive for Todd was that I owned up to my infidelity. And I said, I am truly, truly sorry for doing what I did. And I accept my own truth. I accept who I am. I accept what I did. And he bawled. He said, I've been waiting 4 or 5 years for you to admit, not because of what I did, but because of what you did. And I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I was crying like a baby.
Like, it impacted him like that, you know. I didn't realize how necessary that was for me, for me to accept my faults. And it actually made me feel good, because I finally felt, you know, like I felt like I was opening up to my truth.
And so, guys, we just want to let you know that no matter what the challenge, no matter what you've gone through, if there is a little glimmer of hope that you can overcome it, you can. And that couple is a perfect example of so many other couples who've gone through challenges and have put in the necessary work to transform their relationship. We're excited because all week long we're talking about this topic, rethinking divorce. We're going to spend the entire week doing so. So what we want you to do, even as you're watching this, we want you to post your question. We're about to end this episode for today, but post your question so that we can address it, because many of you have many questions and you have many challenges as it relates to, should I actually do this? You're vacillating back and forth as to what you should do, and hopefully we can offer some information that'll give you a step and a push in the right direction. So love you guys, and we'll see you in the morning. Have a great day.
Can't bring us down, can't nothing bring us down. Our love is too high.